Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Chatting Vintage Games, the podcast that reminds you that you're not out of touch, it is the children who are wrong. I'm Chris Scullion and I'm here with VGC editor Andy Robinson and Jörg Tittel, the director at Rapid Eye Movers, and among numerous other roles, the man's got his thumb in more pies than Little Jack Horner. Jörg, what are you currently working on at the moment? Could you introduce your history to the young boys and girls that may not be familiar with your long line of work?
Sea Smash VRS New Dimension, our upcoming PS5 game based on the Dreamcast icon Cosmic Smash, has just received a free demo on PlayStation 5, and then the full game is getting an update because the PSVR 2 game originally, which has been beautifully received and had lots of nominations and some wins and things. I'm really, really proud of it. Anyway, that game is now going to be on PS5, 26th of September, at the end of this month, and it's going to offer hybrid online multiplayer between PS5 and PSVR 2 players and stuff.
That's awesome. What a
Yes.
game. And that is also obviously one of the reasons why we've got you on today, because Sea Smash is, of course, based on the cult favourite Dreamcast game, Cosmic Smash. And I also believe way back in the day, you used to write for the official Dreamcast magazine as well, if that's true. So we're going back.
Oh, we're going back. It's so funny. It's like it really was the best era. It was like I was just actually yesterday on Twitter exchanging some messages with someone at IGN, because they were talking about the Dreamcast was just the best console, and I don't know what it is. It is this device that didn't feel like a product. It just felt like this little art installation in your living room, and it was just so full of creativity and the simplicity of it as well. It was just all about. It was barely larger than the disc. Just like popped it in. It was just a nice little square, and it was so inviting because it was like 4 plugs on the front. It's all about like doing stuff together. It was the whole thing was just joy, and then and the creativity on that was immense. And I was studying at New York University, when I was really broke, like being like growing up, being in New York as a foreigner, at the New York prices, it was so scary. And it was, Chris Charla, who offered me my first writing gig in the US for Next Generation magazine. And then they set up Official Dreamcast magazine. Now Chris heads up ID at Xbox. And yeah, it was just such a great time working for them. I met some of my now collaborators. Like, for instance, I just made a game last year on the Playdate with Frédéric Renal, the creator of Alone in the Dark. And who also made a game called Toy Commander, which is one of my favorite Dreamcast titles. Actually, one of the best.
Love Toy Commander.
Oh, so can we do a session together one day and like play it together?
The
game is it's so fucking good. It's just, isn't it?
It is, and it didn't get a lot of. It got some love, and it gets as much love as it deserved. I think a lot of people, because it was on one of the demo discs. I think a lot of people discovered it that way, but I don't think so many.
I remember the stores at launch just being full of that game. Everyone playing that game. It's one of those titles that this makes sense that you can look at it and immediately tell it's a Dreamcast game.
Mm-hmm.
It just has that aesthetic.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, one day you should have Frédéric on the show. If you want, I'll introduce you because he's a legend. But I'm also working with him on a title which I haven't announced yet. But what's exciting about Frédéric is that he's still like a you're talking about kids and being kids. It's like, I mean, he just doesn't grow old. He's just one of those people who just gets like ridiculously excited about fun ideas and gameplay. And he really is the French Miyamoto in that sense. But I'll tell you a story. It's slightly sad because it's the last time I saw my mom, because then she passed away a couple months after that. It was in the south of France where my parents had a house, and it was a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, and it was a beautiful summer. And Frédéric had just, this was 22 years or something after I'd written about Toy Commander for the Official Dreamcast magazine. He says, like, Jörg, I found in my attic a whole box of Toy Commander. I don't know what to do with this crap. I said, do you want one? Do you want a copy? And it's like, and one box contained a bunch of the Japanese, the copies of the Japanese version, which is all quite rare, actually. It's super lovely, the Japanese cover. And so he popped a couple of them in the mail for me. And I asked him to send them to my mom's house because it was closer. He lives in Lyon, in France. And so it was there. And anyway, so I'm there for a few days. We're spending some time with the kids, and then suddenly a friend of mine who I grew up with in Belgium gives me a call and says like, "Dude, do you happen to be at your mom's house this summer? Like, I'm driving to Spain, and maybe on the way through we could say hi." And he's like, "Yeah, absolutely, come over." So he came over with his kids who were like 5 and 6 years older than my kids and didn't have any languages in common because they speak Flemish and whatever. And so they were just playing one day in the pool and just jumping in and out. I mean, pools are really cool co-op multiplayer spaces, IRL. But the next day, the weather was so bad and it was such a horrible thunderstorm, and like the kids were bored out of their senses. I mean, they couldn't do anything. And so my mom said to me, like, don't you have like this Sega thing, gathering dust somewhere, And I'd forgotten that because I was a game journalist, also writing for European press, that they'd sent me a Dreamcast to my mom's house like 20 years ago. And I completely forgot that I had that thing because I have a Japanese and an American one because I love the Dreamcast. Anyway, and I had that and I plugged it in. There was 3 joypads there. I wish I had a 4th one, but I plugged it in. And the weather was shit. And then for 6 hours straight, the kids were playing Toy Commander because it's the only game I had. So for 6 hours, they were all playing this 20-year-old, 22-year-old game and having an incredible time. And then at the end of it, the oldest kid walks up to me and he goes, "Uncle Jorg?" I was like, "Yeah." "I just wanted to say, I didn't know that games can be this much fun." And you know what's crazy? He was wearing a Fortnite t-shirt. And that, I think, says a lot. I'm so happy that we're having this chat this week when, just a couple of days after Astrobot has come out, which definitely. Is not, it's not about nostalgia at all. It is so cultured, that game. It is so deeply educated about what makes games fun, and it leans into it so much. It's not a nostalgia trip. It's not a retro game. It's none of that crap, And actually, Dreamcast isn't even a retro console. The games don't feel retro. They feel timeless.
Yeah, it's funny because that's something I thought when I was doing my Dreamcast book. I'd do a book every year about different systems, and the system before it was the N64, and I was enjoying it, but you could still feel these games do feel quite dated, like GoldenEye and stuff like that. The frame rates suffers these days and stuff like that. And then I moved on to the Dreamcast book, and it's hard to believe that that's just a one generation or as even half a generation leap. And the difference...
I think there's a few reasons for that. I think first of all, the Dreamcast was basically designed as the arcade machine, right, for the home. To Jorg's point before we came on, he's got a beautiful Naomi arcade machine behind him for those watching on video. The Dreamcast was built to seamlessly be able to port those games being made for arcade over to the home, right? Which was a big thing up until that's probably the last generation where that was a thing, right? Consoles were always chasing the arcade perfect ports. Like, were they capable? Because the arcade was, where everyone kind of aspired to be in terms of games technology. So the arcade games in themselves are quite timeless, right? They're quite simple, quite pure, gaming experiences. But also the fact that obviously Sega kind of, shut shop as a console provider after this gen, it also means it literally is this time capsule where, like a lot of the teams they assembled, like, UGA, who, kind of encapsulate that spirit. They were a new team in Shibuya, the very trendy part of Tokyo, young people, some of them who'd working on their first game, to come up with brand new ideas. And obviously they came up with Space Channel 5 and they came up with Res that were, incredibly kind of modern, not kind of zeitgeisty for younger people types of games. And when I think it's fair to say that probably there's 2 consoles that changed my life, and Dreamcast is one of those. At the right age, I would have been kind of mid-teens, and it changed why, kind of how I thought about what games could be, from Shenmu to Res to Phantasy Star Online, Jet Set Radio in different ways changed the way that, these games can be, about these things. They can be sociable. They can be, about, music. They can be, kind of take me to new places, to new worlds. Um, I find it significant that I'm definitely not like a big Sega fanboy, and I thought about this in the run up to this. Why is that?
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to that time capsule thing that everything I loved about that kind of ceased to be when they went third party. Only, I mean, obviously they got it. They're back. They're back to a lot of respect now. They're Sega are kind of like certainly at their peak post console era right now, I think. But for at least a decade afterwards, Sega were the Western publisher who made Football Manager and Total War and stuff like that. Like they made RTS games and all of the kind of the flavor that made them as arcade powerhouse special kind of disappeared. And that's kind of highlighted when kind of anyone who follows me on social media would have seen I went for a really, really cool dinner a couple of weeks ago with the art director of Space Channel 5 and a lot of her kind of ex-colleagues who worked on Panzer Dragoon and Res. And those guys are like, they're still, they reminds me of sort of like us, Chris, where, like when magazines break up and you have like meetups with your old team and they've kind of gone on and done other stuff, like most of them outside of games or kind of freelancing. But that was, they've never really kind of got back together and done anything full steam since then.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
You mentioned just quickly. You mentioned that the Dreamcast was one of the two consoles that changed your life. Presumably, the other one was the Philips CDI. I think that goes without saying.
Of course, yeah, the 3DX.
Thought so. Jörg, sorry.
32X, sorry.
What a library on that one.
I have really fond is the wrong word, but strong memories of getting. I got a this shows you what kind of how my parents used to spoil me at Christmas. I got a Mega CD and a 32X at Christmas, right? I spent literally all of Christmas trying to hook that bloody thing up, and it never. One of the wires was like had a bent pin in it or something. But when you're like 12, 11 or 10 or whatever I would have been, it was like, I'm just, I'm persevering. And 1 out of every 100 attempts, Knuckles Chaotix would come on the screen. You'd get a picture. But if you jiggled it even slightly, it's gone.
But if only you knew how much it would be worth today, that game on eBay,
Honestly, it'll be in my parents' loft or something.
Dude, I think they sell it for like £400 or something now, that thing.
Wow.
Like I sold my Mega CD a long time ago, many years ago, and Snatcher was among the games that sold. Right. Just as one of the games that on you go, and like if I'd have held on to that, sad days.
You use it as a coaster,
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting. This to me, the Dreamcast is the first and last indie console. Like it's I think arcade is one way of putting it, but I think the spirit behind the teams like UGA, United Game Artists, or Sega Rosso, who actually were the team behind Cosmic Smash, and also Initial D Arcade, which was actually after the Dreamcast. They did Initial D, which is awesome, right? And but all those teams, WoW, all of them, they were indies. Like they were, and the way they were. So when Frédéric, for instance, give you another anecdote from him, when his company was bought by Sega, acquired, and changed their name to No Cliché, and during his first meeting with the Japanese man in charge of Sega Europe at the time, I can't recall his name at the moment. He was based out of London, so Frédéric flies to London, meets up with the president of Sega Europe at the time, and he's a bit nervous and stuff because he doesn't know what to expect from this meeting post acquisition, etc. And he goes like, so what would you like us to make then? What kind of games are you looking to have on this next system? And the guy goes, the president of Sega Europe goes, you are Frédéric Rénal, right? He goes, yes. You know how to make games? Yes. So make the game you want to make.
That's
and
awesome.
He went, okay. And then he's about to, thank you, sir. And he sort of walks out the room and he goes, oh, but there's one thing. And he goes like, oh, fuck. And he turns around and he goes like, just make sure it comes out on the day of the Dreamcast European release. That was it. And
Perfect.
when you talk to pretty much everybody, whether it's the Jet Set Radio team or Tetsuya Mizuguchi about Res, or indeed Space Channel 5, like all of them, there's not one sort of directive from Sega that said, like, you make sure that you now make games that has skateboards for the kids and graffiti sprays, or whatever. It's like it was people were just making their own stuff, and the teams were pretty small. Like they were comparatively, they were quite like similar in size to today's sizable indie teams. So it was an indie console in spirit, etc. And this is why the innovation in indies today, when you play like a really good indie title, it's fun and with replayability and this kind of stuff, it feels like a Dreamcast game, doesn't it?
Yeah,
a little bit.
Absolutely. I feel devastated for the creators of the Ouya, who have been ignored as an indie console. But hey, that's life. Obviously one of the other main kind of selling points of the Dreamcast was it was the first console to have, it wasn't the first to have online connectivity, but it was the first to have it built in. Obviously you had kind of occasional tinkerings with connectivity, like the Satellaview and the Sega channel and the Genesis and stuff like that, but to have a modem built into the console, and to offer like really basic web browsing, online multiplayer, like some of the first kind of console DLC. I remember downloading a weird Coca-Cola themed DLC for Sonic Adventure, which was like probably like 30 kilobytes or something. It literally just replaced a few textures and added.
But you had to wait half an hour to connect,
before you did. You did. What a noise, like music, like an angel singing.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, was that anything either of you dabbled with the online multiplayer?
Fantasy Star Online is one of my favorite games of all time. I think it's fair to say it was a transformative experience for me. You could happily hook me up to that on my deathbed and send me away, and I'd be a happy man, kind of whacking space badgers to that wonderful soundtrack. It was just incredible, as I say, transformative experience. Like just as a like piece of social gaming as well. Being able to, and there's something special about that era when you could meet people in games online and you haven't got down a mic. It's just a much more elegant, text chat. Yeah. With the little speech bubbles.
Yes, and you felt like space explorers, didn't you?
Yeah, that was so immersive in a way that online gaming cannot be immersive now in the same way, because you kind of have to have voice chat in every experience now, and it does take away from that immersion. But the immersion was, you felt like you were on that spaceship with all these other explorers, kind of
alone together.
I put thousands and thousands of hours into that game. Thousands of hours. I couldn't tell you exactly why, because obviously, infamously, every 1,000 hours or so, your save would corrupt. Like with all online kind of online games, there would be kind of bad actors who worked out bugs where if you picked up certain items that they'd kind of glitched in, it would corrupt your save file and things like that, and you'd lose everything. And it was like, in those days, it's like certain things, like they didn't have they had sharp edges that online games since kind of rounded off. Like things like if you dropped an item and you disconnected or you didn't pick up, that item's gone. It could be an item that it took you hundreds of hours to find. I remember stuff like that just going mental, and you lose your save, and it'd be really like you literally would have lost things that you had invested hundreds of hours in to get, but. It was such an incredible game. I had the big Dreamcast keyboard.
Yeah.
This one?
Yes, that one. Yeah.
I mean, to me, that keyboard
for those listening on audio, Chris has decided to pull his Dreamcast keyboard out of the loft to show everyone, like it's a rare artifact.
Oh no, I was literally just as a visual aid for anyone watching.
Yeah, that's a keyboard.
I've got a collection of visual aids here that I can ring up as needed.
To me, that keyboard is all about typing of the dead, but which
that's what I bought it for.
Yeah, but I love that. But the thing that got me online was ChuChu Rocket, which Sonic Team actually used to test their online servers prior to launching Phantasy Star online. And oh man, I love that game so much.
Yeah,
and it was like that was the first time
I could sit and play Phantasy Star online for the rest of the day.
Yeah, that and also ChuChu Rocket, I could play that forever as well. Really good. That was
because ChuChu. I don't know if I don't know if this happened in the US, but certainly in Europe, everyone gets sent a free copy of ChuChu Rocket if they'd signed up to some sort of newsletter.
Yeah,
or
it's
something.
like BT Internet or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So,
Yes.
like loads of people just got like a free.
You signed up
Dreamcast
for
game.
it was like they were using it in conjunction with some ISP to drive like people signing up for the internet, obviously for it. But
yeah.
But also there was this incredible. Oh, sorry.
Those games you mentioned, like, just sort of remind me. Like, I'm getting like tangible flashbacks of what it was like during that particular generation. That every game was a pure discovery. It was a brand new experience that I've not had before or since.
Yeah.
Like a Nintendo 64, which is probably my favorite console ever. Even though those games were also kind of like transformative experiences for me, you kind of knew what you were getting going into them. Like, Zelda this is going to be the next evolution of Zelda. This is going to be the next one. Maybe other than like Mario 64, but like Star Fox or F-Zero, Mario Kart, you kind of know what you're getting. You didn't. Sorry, that's my dog going mental.
He's saying, "How dare you disrespect the name of Mario Kart 64?" Oh no, you've got visual aids now. Is that how it works?
Yeah. Hello. So what was I talking about? Yeah, so I remember like buying games in those days, like just off the back of like an Edge 10 out of 10 or something like that, right? Like I was getting to the age where I'd upgrade from, a Games Master where everything was a 9 out of 10 and, kind of get to the more highbrow magazines where, if something was a 10 in those days in an Edge, you had to go and buy a console for it, right? I remember people going to buy Xboxes for Halo, and that's what you do. You're like, right, Res is an Edge 10, I'm buying it. Jet Set, I don't know what the hell this game is, Jet Set Radio, I'm going to go and buy it.
Yeah.
And
so the CDI was bought for which 10 out of 10?
That was the Games Master 10 out of 10, yeah.
But yeah, no, you're right. There were so many Dreamcast games that, like, I mean, Res is
like Power Stone as well. Like, you could just come up with all these amazing original IPs that were just, these big treasure chests that you were opening.
Virtua Tennis. Virtua Tennis.
Yeah,
Virtua Tennis too.
Virtua Tennis was the game I used to bond with my uni flatmates. When we moved to university, I thought I had the PS2 was out just when I joined uni. When I started uni, I thought I'll bring that for DVDs and I'll put that in my wee kind of room, my PS2. But I'll bring the Dreamcast as well and put that in the living room because of the 4 controller ports. And basically, we invented a new game called Danger Tennis. And what you would do is you would go to the pub all night. And come home at go out to a club, come home at 2 or 3 in the morning. I'm sober because I'm teetotal, but the rest of them were steaming drunk, and we do doubles tennis and just play for hours. And it became Danger Tennis because people would fall asleep while they were playing, and you had to get punched by your flatmate. If you fell asleep, the guy in your team had to punch you to wake you up again. And that was the danger element in Danger Tennis. Everyone's just walking about with painful arms for 2 years. Yeah,
that was what a game. It's actually that game as well, to give you another example of the cool stuff that was happening within the Dreamcast scene. Like the developers would really collaborate with each other, and which is similar to the indie scene now, where there's a lot of indies that we talk, and we exchange, we help each other, we try as much as possible. But within the Dreamcast developer community, it was not handed down by the corporation, but it was encouraged by the spirit of the way all of it was set up, where you had the second party developers like Bizarre Creations, who had a unique deal, or 1.5 party, whatever they called themselves, where they weren't owned by Sega, but they had a really, really very close relationship with the hardware from the very beginning. And that's why they made, Project Gotham Metropolis Street Racer, Fur Fighters, and which was amazing, and all these great things. And they would just exchange notes and help each other with tech and whatever. So in the case of Virtua Tennis, the engine for that was passed on over to the Sega Rosso team to do this little experimental game called Cosmic Smash. And so the ball physics in that game are actually from Virtua Tennis. So
you could theoretically say that you've made a new Virtua Tennis game then.
Yes, which is why the special attack, it's called Trick Smash and Cosmic Smash, the original game, but we called it Power Smash because Virtua Tennis, the Japanese title, is Power Smash.
It's Power Smash. Oh, here we go. We're getting the nerdy references in now.
Yes.
Here's a game I don't think gets the love it deserves, is Headhunter, and I think it's because it came out so late in the Dreamcast life. But that, if you go back and play that game now, that feels like one of the very first examples of the genre that a lot of people play nowadays. Still, this kind of over the shoulder, kind of third person action game with the cover mechanics and stuff that felt so far ahead of its time. Even like the open world driving sections and stuff like that. But it came out so late. I think it came in like the end of 2001, by which point we already knew it was dead. And because of that, maybe it didn't get anywhere near the attention it would have got if the Dreamcast had continued.
It's a great game. It's sort of Metal Gear Solid with less, which requires less sort of thinking in some ways. But I really enjoyed that about it. Actually, I thought the stealth segments were not a pain in the ass. I'm not saying that Metal Gear Solid has pain. I mean, it takes a lot. I mean, it requires a lot of the player, and it was just a little bit more Hollywood in its approach, a little bit more easy to digest. I really loved that game, and actually, it came out for PS2 later. So for people who have a PlayStation 2, they should hunt down Headhunter.
Well, it got a sequel as well, didn't it, on PS2? It got a second game, didn't it? Which I never played.
Redemption, something like that. Headhunter,
something like
Revolution,
that.
Something.
Yeah.
Great game.
Good
that was
times.
and also Shenmu. Andy mentioned it earlier, but it's like that. We wouldn't have the Yakuza games. We wouldn't have Like a Dragon. We wouldn't have fucking any third-person sort of semi-open worldy, sort of narrative driven with combat sequences game, which is pretty much every AAA title now. Without those games.
Shenmue feels like a Beatles game in that, like, when you show it to kids today, they'll look at it and go, I don't get it. It doesn't seem that much different from. And it's like, yeah, but this created it. This was the inspiration. This was like, if you go like back then, just the idea of that you could walk about Rio's house at the start and pick things up, and sure enough, you could only rotate it along one axis, like just hold it in front of your hand and pick stuff up. But that was mind blowing at the time. The fact you got your pocket money every day, it was like, what?
It was crazy. And the other thing we know what's crazy as well is like, because Andy said that earlier about the music in Phantasy Star, like every single Dreamcast game. I don't know. Maybe this is the case for anyone who loves anything, but I can hear when you mention any of the titles. I can hear it. Yeah. I can hear the music of every title. Like you mentioned Shenmue, I hear it. Mention ChuChu Rocket, it's like dum ding dum ding dum dum dum. You're like, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like whatever title you mention, I hear the theme song.
And of course, you mentioned Crazy Taxi, and it's Offspring right away in your head. It's like, yeah. I wasn't going to attempt it. I was hoping somebody else would. But it's
like, and maybe potentially the future vice president of the United States of America, potentially Crazy Taxi fan. Have we gotten to the bottom of exactly what games he was addicted to? Because he was a Dreamcast
that's right.
fan.
He was a big Dreamcast fan. That's right.
I'm sure it was something very mundane, like 2K, whatever the sports
the NBA
game
2K,
was.
Yeah.
No, it was like the NFL one.
NFL 2K was,
whatever the Sega equivalent was of Madden.
The Godzilla Tech game.
That's the thing as well that people forget, is that the 2K series started as Sega Sports titles. Like the NBA, not that there's a hell of a lot to celebrate about the NBA 2K series just now because of all the microtransactions, but that series began on Dreamcast as a Sega Sports game, and so that's another. What we've got here? We've got a visual aid for the people. Oh, a cheeky VMU, and it looks like a very rare VMU.
That's the Godzilla one. That's one of the Godzilla ones.
That's
Look
extremely.
At that. But hang on.
Are we just doing show and tell?
We'll go through show and tell now.
Oh,
I'm trying. I don't know. What VMU is that?
VMU.
They made 3.
This is
look
for
at
those
that.
Listening on
That's
audio.
fantastic.
Yorg's holding up some very rare VMUs with beautiful, colourful Japanese artwork.
The only.
That's so cool.
And now for people listening, Chris is rummaging on the floor.
Do you know it's out of reach? It's out of reach. I don't know if I can even be bothered getting up for it, but I've got my Dreamcast Hello Kitty. My Hello Kitty Dreamcast sitting just out of reach. So yeah, it's the Dreamcast had some of the coolest rare stuff. Do you know I eBayed that as a 10 for those listening. It's the 10th anniversary Sonic Adventure 2 thing they brought out. It had like a really fancy coin in it, I believe, and maybe a soundtrack CD.
And look, it even has like Shadow on there. Look at that.
Yeah.
He's having his comeback this year, but he really started shining on that. It celebrated.
Andy's now showing the.
I've got those.
Space Channel 5 Japanese version and Ray's EU version. Oh, the signed as well.
I have a signed one
signed
too.
by Michael Jackson.
Oh no, I don't.
We're having a merch off.
Signed by Space Michael.
That's
another thing. The Dreamcast has an oddly high ratio of games with Michael Jackson in them. So you've got Space Channel 5 games and Ready to Rumble Round 2 had Michael Jackson in it as well.
Well, I played Michael Jackson Moonwalker in the arcade with the director of Space Channel 5 last week.
Game.
It was a moment.
That's pretty cool. You know, like Michael Jackson's, I know, of course, controversial figure, etc. But kids. But the sorry. But his connection to Sega was interesting, and to the Dreamcast era specifically. I mean, like after Moonwalker, you know, he famously or infamously did the music for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, right? And then he also lent his face and actually appeared in video in this Sega arcade title. I forget the name now, which was recently.
Yeah.
Remember they dug up that VHS tape?
They found the footage of it, yeah.
AS1 damage reports.
Checking. No damage detected.
Come on, everybody. We're going into the big leagues now. All engines to maximum. A shuttle is now going orbit. Our next mission will be combat training. Right now in Earth's orbit, our battle fleet is already engaged in an exercise. All weapons have been disarmed, so you need not worry about the danger of engaging the targets you'll be facing.
Yeah, and the director of that arcade game was the executive producer and also of Cosmic Smash and the founder of Sega Rosso. Previously, the director of Sega Rally. Previously, the art director on Ridge Racer, right? Keiji Sasaki.
No, you're talking.
Legend, right?
Crazy.
And the director of Initial D Arcade. And so Sasaki-san, who's become a friend, and he's amazing. But so there was more to this. Oh yeah, so he did that, and then Michael Jackson did this music video called Scream. I don't know for it was a duet with his sister, with Janet Jackson.
Oh, you're going to make a Cosmic Smash connection here because of the bit where they hit the floating ball thing.
Yeah, so the director at Sega Rosso was a young guy, young designer, young animator actually, and Sasaki-san heard his idea because he had seen the video, saying I want to make a game that's that. And he said, sure, you go ahead and have yourself a team of 3-4 people and do that. And so that's how that happened. And get yourself the code from Virtua Tennis, right? So that's how that happened. It was this. So it was this weird circular thing where also you watch the Scream video and you see anime in there. You see a Japanese sort of anime on a big screen. So you have the influence from Japan, aesthetically onto that video, and then him really influencing Japan back again with that, and then of course appearing in Space Channel 5. It was a really crazy, fruitful. It was an art project, the Dreamcast, and Sega in general. Yeah. It was just art, and we've lost that feeling, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I must admit, when I started this podcast, I didn't expect to come out of it with the knowledge that Cosmic Smash is the love child of Michael Jackson and Virtua Tennis. But I'm all the wiser for it, I think. We were talking about the keyboard earlier. Like, did either of you own any of the other kind of strange controllers? Because the Dreamcast was good for its weird. It had the fishing rod controller. It had the maracas for Samba de Amigo. It had the what else? It had it like. Oh, we've got a camera move here to show us something.
A shelf. For those listening,
and most of the stuff on there is Dreamcast stuff. So it's like. Yeah, anything from the maracas to the Samba de Amigo stuff to fishing rod to fucking. I mean, there's just what's wrong with me?
Did you do? You must have done then the fishing rod with Soul Calibur.
Of course.
That was the trick. That for those who are not aware, they brought out a fishing rod. It was for Sega Bass Fishing originally, wasn't it? They brought out a fishing rod controller that you could kind of wind, but then people realized that you could use the controller for Soul Calibur as well, and essentially swing it like a sword, which kind of predated the Wii in a sense. So take that, Nintendo. But yeah, that was another kind of lovely wee extra that just was fantastic. It just came out of nowhere.
And it also did cross-platform multiplayer for the first time. Which one was
Oh,
it?
that's right. I remember Quake 3. Is Quake 3?
No, it was a.
I remember playing Quake
title.
3 for the first time.
Was this the one of the Marvel? Oh no, was it Marvel vs. Capcom where you could plug the VMU into the arcade machine?
No, it was playing against PlayStation. Believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Dreamcast.
Could you not play PC players with Quake 3?
Or possibly. I'm sure.
Potentially,
I'm sure
yeah.
No chance against them.
Yeah, you would have got absolutely hammered. Unless you bought the Dreamcast mouse, of course.
I'm not checking.
And there was also
it did, yeah. So Quake 3 you could play against PC players.
That's crazy, man, to think like way back then.
It was fully possible for Capcom versus SNK2 Dreamcast players to fight their PlayStation 2 counterparts in Japan, because PlayStation was famously against cross-platform.
Yeah,
but they allowed it for this. I don't know how that happened, but so that thing really was pioneering in so many ways. And then it would take another 10 years or so or more before PlayStation would allow cross-platform multiplayer again with any other rival consoles.
There was even literal. I'm sure in Japan there's a link cable that you'll link it up to a Neo Geo Pocket for a couple of games.
Yes,
So
cool spot. Cool too.
Yeah.
Cool. Hang on, let me find it.
Yeah. So the fact that it was even like not just cross play but actual cross connectivity. You can imagine a Switch connected to a PlayStation these days. That was the equivalent.
So you had cool tune.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had cool jam on Neo Geo. Yes.
That's right, and they connected with each other.
Who's the nerd? I'm the nerd.
Well, you might be, of all people, might be the one to help me with this, because I bought this for my Dreamcast book, because the whole point of the book, for those who don't have it, is covering every single Dreamcast game ever released, but that included the Japanese ones, which meant sifting through a lot of visual novels and trying to figure out what the hell was going on. Usually they're quite dodgy stuff about schoolgirls, but hey, the book's the book. But also I had to buy
a book is a book. Is that how it works now?
A book is a book. I can't just leave out the schoolgirl dating ones. I can't take a moral stance on that. But I did. I bought the Dream Eye, which is a webcam for the Dreamcast, and a big component of that is connecting online, which obviously can't do anymore. But I've not actually tried it. I played enough of it to get a screenshot for the book, but I need to. Apparently, you can take the camera out and it still works as a digital camera. You walk about with it, and then you plug it into the Dreamcast, and some sort of magic happens. But I'm going to experiment with that at some point.
That's so great.
Video mail.
Speaking of books, look at this beautiful book.
Engine chocolate, lovely.
It's a Power Stone comic book.
That's awesome.
But how great is that cover? I thought that candy was edible. It looks so 3D, but it's really nicely done. I just had to have that because it's just look at that. It's just so cute.
Power Stone, of course, is finally getting re-released, and Capcom is releasing it in
finally
fighting game.
Finally,
it's kind of stunning how they've overlooked that game. Yeah. What an absolute classic!
Because PSP was the last time they re-released those, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, but absolute majestic games.
I mean, thankfully, like Sega, understood that, the future of the Dreamcast was portability, and then when they released this handheld Dreamcast console, they didn't.
Is that custom build? That
yes, it's a custom build. Yeah, it's a Chinese. Oops,
it's very good.
Oh,
yeah, you've tested it. Yeah,
it's great. It's very good.
That's fantastic.
Freaking.
By the way, what the hell was that?
I was going to say I do prefer the European jingle. The start up.
Hold on, that's the Japanese boot up for Dreamcast.
Yeah.
No. That is a weird, I think, emulator thing or something.
Oh, really? I'm sure there was multiple boots. So because Europe we had the
buy the Dreamcast encyclopedia, everyone, out now.
Yeah, no, the Japanese one has the same one because the music for. The music for the startup screen was actually created. You know who made the music, right, for the Dreamcast boot up?
Go on.
Why am I blanking on the name now? This is terrible.
Do you know?
1 sec.
Michael Jackson?
It was Ooh La La.
But the person who made the music for the boot up was Ryuichi Sakamoto. And Ryuichi Sakamoto unfortunately passed away after a long battle with cancer last year. But Sakamoto also was the creative director. Oh, here, look at Cosmic Smash running on my portable Dreamcast for those. Hang on.
For those on video. Lovely.
It is indeed running.
That's fantastic.
Look at that. Right?
Lovely.
Jorg is indeed playing his fake mini Dreamcast.
It's real.
It
is a real portable, to be fair.
But Sakamoto, one of the greatest ever composers. So Richard Sakamoto, who also did the incredible soundtrack for The Last Emperor. Great movie. For those who haven't watched it, please watch it. It's a great film. And so Sakamoto-san was one of the greatest composers. And also he was also one of the members of the Yellow Magic Orchestra. So he was just, an incredible musician in pop and classical and film, etc. But he also was the creative director of a game, of one of the hidden gems of the Dreamcast as well, a game called Lack of Love, which I don't know if you've played Lack of Love. Have anyone played Lack of Love?
That was a really weird one because it's just called LOL, wasn't it? On
LOL
the cover, yeah. That was an odd one.
It's a great one. It's a great game. It's a bit like it has a lot of elements that predate games like Spore and other stuff like that. It's because you're growing from like
start as a tiny organism, don't you?
Yeah, and you get bigger and bigger, and you mutate and grow, and you scale up towards the environment and stuff. It's so fucking good. Yeah, it's weird as fuck, and it takes a while for you to. Sorry for the cursing there. Got excited. Yeah. But it's so good, and it's like for this great artist to work on, and he did the startup music for the Dreamcast, Sakamoto.
That's fantastic. I'm conscious of the time. We should probably get to the Patreon users because Patreons. We asked our Patreon peeps for. I just said peeps. That's quite disturbing. For their memories of the Dreamcast. So we should probably get through some of those. Steve, we all know Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Said great console, love mine and still have it. Poorly marketed by Sega though. How much would the Arsenal sponsorship have cost? I forgot Dreamcast was on the Arsenal shirts for a while, and a couple other. Like San Etienne had Dreamcast, and potentially an Italian team also had Dreamcast around about the same time. I remember it was 3 teams that they sponsored, but I don't remember the others. But he says a kid of 8 or 9 was avidly watching the TV at Debenhams in Oxford Street and excitedly said to his mum, "Look at the graphics, Mum. I think it's Time Splitters." Time Splitters wasn't on the Dreamcast, was it?
I'm not sure it was.
So.
No. I think they were working on a port for it, but that was cancelled. But yeah, it's a sad thing about that sponsorship for Arsenal because I don't think there was a football game on the Dreamcast, if I can remember.
I think you're forgetting the majesty of Virtua Striker 2 version 2000.1. What a game. But yeah, they also had like Sega Worldwide Soccer, which wasn't that great.
No, it wasn't great. That's what I mean. It's like, it's so weird. You're like talking to the football crowds and then you don't have a game to sell to them.
Yeah, no, famously no FIFA and none of the big kind of EA franchises.
A Wimbledon sponsorship would have been cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Big ass Dreamcast logo, like, carved into the grass, it would have been cool.
Yeah. Jeff Akervik says the Dreamcast North American launch on the 9th of the 9th, 1999 is still, in my opinion, the most memorable launch of any gaming system. The lineup was astounding. I fondly remember picking up my Dreamcast along with 4 games: Soul Calibur, Ready to Rumble, NFL 2K, and NFL Blitz at Best Buy. NFL Blitz, that's the type of game that you don't get anymore, is the kind of arcadey sports game. They're all kind of really serious, and on the occasions where they do attempt something arcadey now, it's lacking something. It's lacking that spark, that kind of we don't give a shit feeling that you got back then in games like NFL Blitz and even like FIFA Street era. Kind of that was about kind of where that kind of stopped, I think.
Yeah, but Rocket League. I mean,
yeah,
like technically, like at least some of the most successful games out there, in a way, embrace that spirit of like sports madness, and but we don't think of them as sports games. There's a game called Sea Smash VRS, which is an arcade sports title, which is really great for. Anyway, but
fantastic game, which we will absolutely speak about at the end, because I want to get that plugged, because it is fantastic. Viva La Hazy says he mentions a game that is one of my personal favourites on the Dreamcast that we haven't touched on yet. He says, I only played a Dreamcast once at my mate's house. I always remember playing a QTE based cop game which turned out to be Dynamite Cop. What a game. We've suddenly got special effects without mention. Dynamite Cop was a very short game, because it was like obviously an arcade style beat 'em up. Well, it was an arcade game, but what a game! There's some of the bizarre stuff that goes. At one point, you go into a big giant freezer and fight a chef while swinging giant sardines at him.
It's a great game. But it's like that, and also, I mean, we mentioned Power Stone already, but fuck the fun that was had with that. Like, it's just, I haven't had this much fun. I genuinely haven't had this much fun since with other people. Just doing like, and anyone could pick it up. Like, you just picked it up. There was no skills involved. I mean, that's one thing that really is. I mean, you would, of course, the more you played it, the more skills you would have. But I want to just pick it up and play it like instantly, and that's something you just don't have with Fortnite and all that jazz now. It's become so hyper specialized. You need a fucking driver's license to play these games. And it's like, it is true. It's like I was in a panel at BAFTA yesterday, and there's some people in the audience. It was mostly directed towards like, mostly for directors and writers who work in film and TV, how they can work with games and whatever. And so like 2 or 3 people in the audience go like, well, I'm not a gamer and I don't. And every time I fucking hear that, my heart sinks, because, I'm not a movieer or a booker or a musicer, right?
Yeah.
And since the Dreamcast died, like games have been dominated more and more by tech companies, right? Because Sony is a hardware company with culture at its heart, and I really value about it. But Microsoft is a tech giant. They don't really care about culture at all. Like, as a matter of fact, they care more about guns and Call of Duty, right? and as a matter of fact, like, they've turned the joypad more and more into a thing designed around the trigger, right? To the point where even PlayStation now has made it the most engineered button on there. So everything, ultimately, shooting stuff is now the most important, most gamey game thing to do, and that's something that the Dreamcast was not about. The Dreamcast was like, you could do fishing, you can do this, you can do dancing, you can do maracas, you could do, keyboards. It's everything. It's the everything machine. It's the thing that sits at the center of the living room, just brings fun to you.
Yeah.
And for the whole family, 1 to 4 players on the same screen, ideally. But if not, also online. You can do that too.
Yeah. And when it was about shooting stuff, it was done in an extremely fun way. Like our last Patreon comment here from Jason Burke Darcy, who says, a very specific memory for me was the mini game in House of the Dead 2, where you had to keep a coin in the air. He says it was deeply fun, and when you pair that with clearly the most gorgeous light gun there has ever been, it's just lovely stuff. That was a very cool looking light gun.
Yes.
The
dogs of the AMS, time they made a move. That's actually one of the lines, and I still don't understand what the fuck it means.
It's got some of the most quotable lines.
Yes.
But was it 1 or 2 where the wee gremlin thing comes out and goes, "Suffer like G did"? I can't remember if that was 1 or 2. But yeah. What a prick as well. It's sort of one of the most annoying bosses in history because of the speed he flies about it. Try to play that with a controller, because I didn't have the gun for the longest time. Trying to shoot that guy with a controller was impossible.
Yeah. Oh my
Scum.
God. Yes. But, interesting anecdote. If you go on IMDb and you look up the House of the Dead movie, which is one of the worst fucking things ever made, I'm in the credits.
Yeah. As a zombie or as a
No, I got him the rights. I
so
destroyed
your
Alone
fault?
in the Dark. Yes. The fact that I'm still friends with its creator is quite a miracle, actually. but he didn't have because Infogrames had acquired the rights. I mean, owned it anyway because everyone was an employee and like no one owned their own IP back then. But I didn't know who he was because he hadn't made House of the Dead yet when I gave him the rights to Alone in the Dark actually.
Yeah.
And yes,
Alone in the Dark had who was in the Alone in the Dark? Was Christian Slater in that?
Yes, and Tara Reid plays a scientist. Tara is particularly known for her. She's, of course,
Dr. Reid, I think they call her.
One of her greatest performances.
Yeah. Oh, the glory days. I remember after all the kind of the backlash to the House of the Dead movie, I remember Uwe Ball going on a massive rant, and it had a line that stuck with me for all these years when he said, You don't understand how like how much kind of work goes into this. We had an action scene with 200 Matrix shots in it because there was like a bit where it would just constantly spin around all the time. But just the fact that he showed off about the fact that he had 200 Matrix shots in this movie, so mate, one of these days,
those were the days. Yeah,
they were. One of these days, we'll do a proper retrospective on the House of the Dead movie because it's an experience.
Oh Christ! Don't remind me of that.
Yeah.
But the Alone in the Dark movie, even I mean, the House of the Dead movie is actually moderately fun to watch. But the Alone in the Dark movie, which is actually the one that I have my credit on, I tried to get it removed. IMDb wouldn't let me. Someone at IMDb actually went through the credits, watched the movie, and then said like, "No, you're in there." And fuck. And then when you watch the DVD, which I really recommend, someone picks up you could probably find it for minus £5 online. But if you, when you buy the Alone in the Dark DVD, there's a director's commentary with Uwe Ball on there, in which he literally starts the whole thing. Go like, yeah, this film has happened because this young man called Jörg Trittel. It's like, fuck! Leave me out of this!
You're in it now. It's just been committed to commentary.
Yeah, but you know what? James Cameron directed Piranhas 2, which is one of the worst movies ever made.
That's true. Everyone's got their skeletons.
Yeah.
Speaking of things having their skeletons, I think the one design quirk I think a lot of people talk about with the Dreamcast is the fact that the controller comes out at the bottom rather than the top, and then you have to feed it through that little clip on the back. Did you have any strong feelings about that either way, or? Because some people on the internet seem to think it's the worst controller ever made as a result of that, which I think is quite an exaggeration.
I mean, I don't get it, but I think if you're playing the games upside down doing a handstand, it's quite comfortable. But no, I never had a real issue with it. It was a bit weird and quirky, but that's what I loved about the system. It committed to being unique and committed to doing things differently, not necessarily in this case in the most practical way, but fuck it. That I understand because the VMU goes in there and then
it had a lot going on at the top. Yeah, there's two separate ports, wasn't there? So if you wanted a VMU and the kind of Rumble Pack equivalent in there at the same time, you could have.
Yeah, so it would have been super heavy, and then you would have had to have a dot thing that comes out, making it even bulkier at the top. So it had to come out of the bottom. I get it from a technical point of view. I totally understand it. And for people who complain, I don't understand anything about hardware.
Also the fact that the Rumble, it wasn't called the Rumble Pack, the Jump Pack or the Vibration Pack, it was called in Europe, and the Jump Pack in North America didn't require batteries, which I thought was mind blowing at the time, because obviously the N64 Rumble Pack, at least the official one, needed batteries, and it would get gradually weaker as the batteries died out, and then every time you put new batteries in, you go, oh Jesus, I forgot it was this good. But yeah, the Dreamcast one kind of through some wizardry.
It was amazing, and of course, like the PS2 then got these titles towards the end of its life cycle, which are some of the greatest games. We didn't talk about Skies of Arcadia, by the way, which is incredible. But there's some games towards the end of the Dreamcast's life, Sega Gaga being one of them. Which is
I'm desperate for that to be localized.
Oh, I know.
So one game I've always wanted to play.
I'm friends. I'm friends with the creator of the game, director of the game, and he also made one of the greatest games ever made, in my view, which was the Astro Boy game on GBA,
Game Boy Advance.
Yes, which is just an extraordinary game, and he's actually just made I'd love to talk to you guys about that at some point, because he's made an animated film done entirely in pixel art, which is and all done in Engine. It's stunning, and.
Awesome.
And he's trying to get speaking of localization, he's about to launch his Kickstarter to get it localized.
Okay.
That might be something really cool for us to perhaps all put our forces behind, because he's one of the legends. He's brought us some of the greatest games of all time. But anyway, that one. And then Rez came out towards the end of the Dreamcast, not just towards the end, like 5 months or 6 months after the Dreamcast was officially discontinued.
Yeah.
And as did Cosmic Smash. So they came out within a month of each other. And it was thankfully the PS2 then got Rez as well, along with the trans vibrator. Remember that?
Yeah.
This is a USB powered thing, and you'd stick it into the PS2, and then you get to stick it somewhere special, and then you get to feel it vibrate.
I do remember reading a controversial article a long time ago where a female writer decided to attempt using it in the way it was clearly designed and reported positive things about it. Apparently,
Yes.
it did work. It did work as intended. So fair play to her.
Did it resonate with her?
Apparently, it did what was needed. So,
do you see what I did there when I said did it?
I did.
That's good. I mean, I was hoping for Andy to actually like at least smile a little bit.
Andy's
you've gone off on an indie tangent.
We're talking about Rez pleasuring people, but doing it in a delicate way.
Well, okay. Well, that's more of a PS2.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Are you with us?
I'm here.
Good. We only have a few minutes left, so let us speak about C-Smash VRS, because it is very much a spiritual successor to, well, is it not even a spiritual successor? It is blatantly based on Cosmic Smash. But obviously, Cosmic
officially licensed.
Exactly. So there's nothing spiritual about it. Obviously Cosmic Smash is one of those kind of cult Dreamcast games that, because it didn't come out here, it's one that not as many people who should know about it do know about it, but the ones who are aware of it kind of hold it up there as one of the best on the system. So could you, for those not aware of who maybe didn't have VR headsets or aren't in the whole VR world, I've been playing it on the Quest 3 and love it, and I'm delighted that it's getting a kind of a 2D version so that more people can play it. Could you summarize what it is for those not who haven't bumped into it yet?
It's the future of racket sports set at the edge of space and time, and these beautifully reduced environments. It's almost like graphic design made physical, with incredible music by Kenny Shi, who also did music for Rez, and incredible DJ, best DJ in Japan in my view, and also Danalog from a UK band called The Comet Is Coming. They were Glastonbury headliners last year, and so it's an incredible soundtrack. Actually, the soundtrack will be coming out later this year from Lost in Cult Records, and there'll be a physical release from Limited Run Games containing both the PS5 and the PSVR 2 game on one disc. The PS5 game is playable in third person. The PSVR 2 game is a full body VR game, but it's also possibly the most accessible sports game ever made, especially in VR, because you can play it seated, you can play it standing, you could play it with one arm, with two hands. So it's like we really tried to. We're a tiny team. I mean, to combine with Wolf and Wood, the great development team I was working with on this, and I'm still working with on this. We're tiny, but we wanted to make this as accessible as possible. And to add to that accessibility, now people can play between PS5 and PSVR 2. So between third person on one side and PSVR 2 on the other end, if they want to, which is a crazy thing, because like on the PS5 game, we've added hundreds of new animations and moves, and you can wall jumps and crazy new power smashes off the wall and stuff. You'll see it's super awesome. And which I don't recommend you do when you play the PSVR 2 game, because you will die and fall out the window of your flat or whatever. So you have certain advantages or certain special techniques that are unique to VR versus PS5, but it's somehow really bizarrely balanced, and it's really cool, because when you're playing against a VR player or a flat player, so to speak, and the fact that the other one is like fully animated by us and the other one is animated by their own body is so it feels unreal. It feels really incredible. It feels like you're really like playing across different dimensions. It's fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to playing the flat one, because, like I say, I like I love the VR one on the Quest 3, and I'm looking forward to to seeing how it plays out in third person. If you're listening to this, by the time you listen to this, the demo will be available now on PS5 for C Smash VRS. Check it out. Check out the kind of, if you're not a VR head, as the kids say, I'm reliably informed, then you'll be able to kind of finally see what it's like, because it's fantastic. Before we wrap up, gentlemen, I would like you to name 3 games that people who have no kind of past with the Dreamcast and are discovering it for the first time after listening to this. What are the 3 games you would recommend that they try out? Jörg, first of all, please.
Oh my god. ChuChu Rocket. Just because it's a game that is, yes, it has very simple graphics, but once you have multiple controls in the same room and you play that with your kids across all different ages and stuff, it is so much fun. And the single player puzzle mode is also incredible. It's a game that when you play it now, you understand how it would have inspired, hundreds upon hundreds of indie like puzzle and online gems, since. So it's just a great game. Love that title. I would definitely say Cosmic Smash, because it's the game that inspired my game. But I love it. It's extremely challenging, actually, and it's a great title. There's some other titles on there. Oh my god! I mean, I'd probably say Power Stone. Or Power Stone 2, actually.
Power Stone 2.
Yeah, because it's multiplayer and in a big way, 1 to 4 players, and it's an incredible party game. So I recommend that. There's too many games to list. There's narrative titles, there's Shenmu and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I can't do this in a fair way. I own so many Dreamcast games, and I genuinely love them all in their own way. Yeah. It's difficult.
Andy.
I think the fact that you say you've kind of narrowed this down to games that people should play today, discover today, that kind of limits it a little bit, because certainly the ones that I named my favorite Dreamcast games, half of them I wouldn't recommend you discover for the first time today. I think Shenmue probably has been iterated upon for decades.
Yeah,
massively influential at the time, and it's still a special game, but not in the same way. So, same for Phantasy Star Online. I think even trying to get on to play it now would be difficult.
Yeah.
But certainly Res HD, which is out on modern platforms now, that would be my number one. It's one of my favorite games ever. It's aged wonderfully. It hasn't aged a day.
Yeah.
It's still such a very unique game. It doesn't take more than a few hours to blast through, and it'll be the best few hours of your life if you've got decent headphones or loudspeakers. I agree with Jorg. Power Stone 2 is still just one of the best local multiplayer games ever. I believe it's coming out onto modern platforms soon. They've just announced it. So that is definitely something that you should pick up and give a go if you've not played it before. And finally, probably Jet Set Radio. Sega's revitalizing that one for a reason. Still a very, very unique game. Kind of people have tried to revive it recently and kind of recapture the spirit of that game. It's still very, very special, unique title that that will kind of still stand up today, I think, if you picked it up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, also it had a great sequel as well, Jet Set Radio Future on
I was going to say that Future is probably better, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a better game.
I would say Crazy Taxi, because I think that Crazy Taxi still holds up to this day. I would, to just for a wee kind of left field one, I would say Cannon Spike, because it's another one that I don't think gets as much love as it deserves, and it was a really interesting mix of arcade beat 'em up and arcade kind of run and gun game where you can shoot enemies from a distance or get up close, and there's loads of weird kind of Capcom cameos, like you can play as Cammy or as Mega Man or as a bunch of other kind of characters, and you fight like Vega from Street Fighter and other kind of characters like that. So Cannon Spike's a kind of almost like a hidden gem almost on the Dreamcast. And finally, because I bought it and not enough people bought it and I want them to share my misery, I would say South Park Chef's Love Shack. The abysmal like it was kind of like a game show type thing with mini games on it. I would recommend that just so that I'm not moaning about it and to avoid the other.
But also,
it's
Cyber Troopers Virtual On as well, which I have the dual stick for. as
Of
well.
course you do.
Well,
Of
I might
course.
swap out South Park for that then.
Yeah, dude. Have you played it? Have you
Not
played
with
that
not with
game?
the two sticks. I haven't.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's so good. The stick is so good. It's so clicky. And he's like,
Yeah.
and you fly off. It's like, and then with the side dashes, it's so fucking good. It's so good. It's such a good game. It was really like, it was better than having an arcade at home. It really was.
And I always wanted those kind of. I've played it with a controller, but obviously it's not. Some of these things just don't work that well.
No, it doesn't work.
Samba de Amigo and stuff technically can be played with a controller, but why would you? Like,
no, virtually you've got the two sticks. In order to do the side dash, you have to literally put them like this.
Both
right?
the sides.
And then to turn, you move one forward, one back, like this.
Yeah.
Or if you want to jump up, you pull it back, and then, oh fuck, it's so good. You feel so, it's so good. Yes, we just don't have that these days.
No, we definitely we don't, and we're all the worse for it. But at least it's fairly easy to get a Dreamcast these days. Not so easy to get one with a good laser. The lasers kind of famously died quite quickly. But I'm sure if you do your investigations, you can find alternative means to play games on the Dreamcast, which we won't delve into here. But yeah, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me to reminisce about one of the greatest failure technically in video game history, because purely in terms of sales figures, it has to go down as not a success. But for those who actually owned it, I don't think there's a single person who owned a Dreamcast who would be disappointed with their purchase. I think it kind of it filled the hearts of those who actually bought one. I would also like to give a shout out to our season ticket holders on Patreon, Martimus Prime, BN12, and Matt for throwing the big bucks. That's very much appreciated. And also to all our Patreons, Patreon folk who are listening to this just now, it's very much appreciated. George, do you have any final words on the Dreamcast before we lay it to rest permanently?
Well, I don't think we can let it rest, because it will forever keep inspiring us. And whenever you see a game that brings you joy and brings you an idea you've never seen before, that's how it felt to us every single time we would buy a new title or pick up a new title on the Dreamcast. And that, to me, that spirit of surprise, that spirit of ingenuity, of creativity, of taking risks that sometimes fail, but that leave a lasting impression. That spirit is what games are all about. It's the sort of sameness, the AAA standardization of everything, etc., that has dragged the industry down. That's why we're all kind of suffering right now. Everything has been algorithmically driven and commodified. And that was the last system, the last console, the last game company that refused to do that. That was almost aggressively, perhaps also to their own detriment, but that went against that. And bringing that spirit back, I think, is essential. I think it's actually going to save us all. And the reason we are all sort of loving it so much and that we're talking about it is because we're missing that. Not because we're a bunch of old nostalgic fucks, but is because I think that's why we are here, and that's why games are here, and that's why some of the greatest people still working games are here. So the Dreamcast may be dead, but long live it.
Beautifully put. Andy, final words?
I think it's a testament that if you kind of go, I mean, again, like I spent a bit of time in Japan recently, and you go into an arcade and it's still full of Dreamcast era games. Obviously, a big part of that is what we said at the top about how it was kind of designed to be an easy transition, but it also speaks for, to Jorg's point, to how kind of timeless a lot of those games are, and how beloved they are. And it kind of speaks a lot as well that Sega is now spending billions and billions reviving those, so-called niche Dreamcast games. It was such a special moment to be around gaming at a certain age, and I hope that we get to see more of that in the future.
Agreed. Gentlemen, thank you once again. Thank you to all of you for listening. Next month is October, and so naturally the discussion point will be horror games, or horror games as they say in the US, which I think is a different genre altogether. Thanks guys for listening, and we will catch you on the Flip Flop next month.
Illbleed on the Dreamcast.
What of it?
What game?
guys, Illbleed. You know Illbleed, right?
I'm familiar with
Well, he's
Illbleed.
written the encyclopedia.
No,
I'm familiar
Illbleed.
with it.
I'm in Illbleed actually. I'm actually
Are
a
you in it?
character in Illbleed. Yes, I'm in it. Yeah, because I did.
Do you survive?
I wrote a cover feature about it for Official Dreamcast magazine. This is bonus content for the Patreon. And I became friends with the wonderful Nishigaki-san, who was like the head of the company, who sadly died a few years later. But he before that worked at Climax and did all these incredible. He would hit Blue Stinger as well, another great Dreamcast game, which we haven't even mentioned today. But Illbleed is a cult classic horror game, which famously had one of the first viral videos, of perhaps the first viral video in the video game world that I ever was aware of, because they did a commercial for the US market, which was, "You'll puke with pleasure, you'll vomit with excitement, you'll shit with fear, Illbleed." That was the trailer, and I became friends with the team, and I did so much for them I actually managed through my article to get them a publisher in the US to pick it up, and as a thanks, they immortalized me in the game as a playable character. There's a character called Jörg S. Baker, who actually has my face in it, and I'm a character. I'm even playable in it, which is fucking weird. And I did voices for it as well, so I got to voice my own character in the game, and that's for another episode.
Just when Jason was trying to tell me something pertinent to the crimes, Cunningham murdered him in cold blood, right in front of me.
Jorg, you're phenomenal.
It's nothing. Much.
What's next? Got any more great ideas?
We have to nail Cunningham. He must still be lurking somewhere nearby.
It took you to the wrapping up section before you mentioned the fact you were actually in a Dreamcast game.
I just remembered it, but it's Illbleed. Check it out. It's a cult classic. It's a weird ass game, but another testament to how creative people were in that era, and it's fun as hell. Watch some playthroughs online. It's crazy as hell, and I'm great in it. Man, my performance is terrible.
I couldn't imagine you'd be anything other than great in it.
I'm terrible.
Also wrapping up, I urge people to go to YouTube and check out the intro, but only the intro for The Ring Terror's Realm on the Dreamcast, because the rest of the game is shocking, but the intro is comedy gold.
Yes.
It's fantastic. But yeah, one day, if I ever drink, I'll get drunk and do my impression of the Ring intro, because it's amazing. But anyway, thank you for the 8th time for listening. We'll catch you some other time. Goodbye.